Jack of the Clock was formed in the summer of 2007 between myself and Nikki Rees-Noir. We were both students at Mills College, and then both composition students, and we were interested in forming a group that combined songwriting with more composed music. And it started as a trio with the two of us and Emily Packard on violin, and it was very acoustic at first, and I was playing guitar and hammer dulcimer and singing, and Nikki was playing wine glasses and harp mostly, and a little bit of melodica. And Emily had a couple of violins and a couple of ranges, and it was a very acoustic project initially. And then Jordan joined up about 6 months later, and then and he was playing sort of metal bowls and whatnot. It wasn't a drum set yet, and we did a couple of shows, and then we wanted to get some low end in there, and we were thinking a bassoon might be a nice way to fill it out. So we sort of had a casual eye out for a bassoon player, and then Jason Hoops and Kate McLaughlin materialized around the same time. So we suddenly had bassoon and bass. I think Jason heard us and expressed enthusiasm, and I'd heard him play, and he was a great bass player. And he played with Jordan a lot, and they had a sort of a really kind of symbiotic rhythm section relationship going on. And then it made a lot of sense to have Jordan play drums, and it became a big, louder project. And meanwhile, Nikki had left. She went to Bali eventually to study gamelan, and so it became a quintet and a much more of a rock band. And we went from there, and it's pretty much been that way almost 10 years. We had that was 2008, and Kate left last year, and we took a few new people on board. Ivor Holloway, who had played with us several times as a sax player, and so he's been filling in some of her parts, and also and working on some new material and bringing in some clarinet. And Thea Kelly's been singing with us too. So Kate is kind of on leave of absence now. She lives in New York, but we're going to get back together this fall and do a little tour with her. So it's the borders are a little bit in flux right now. It's weird to say, but I don't really know what we're like on stage, in that I've never watched us, and usually there's a fair amount of, and there's very few videos actually, but the music is pretty demanding. The pieces that we've been playing for a while, we can settle into and relax into a little bit, but there's always a certain, thin thread of concentration and keeping in mind what's coming next, and the sequences of things that need to be done. That keeps me from, me at least, from completely releasing. That said, it's not a tight or overly serious situation. It's fairly relaxed, particularly with the older pieces. Lately, I've gotten into Esperanza Spalding and Fawn Fables, and over the past few years, other significant groups have been Dirty Projectors, Project Zamudo, which is Nick Zamudo of the Books, formerly of the Books, and Joanna Newsom, Jeremy Flower. Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that I'm not thinking of, but that's off the top of my head.
been listening to the Jeremy Flower record that Carla Kilstead, Thias Bossy are both on. Michigan, they're in, I think.
No, he's in Boston.
Is he in Boston?
Yeah.
Oh. Um, I'm drawing a blank, but my friend Scott Evans and Ian Miller are both in a band called Kowloon Walled City. They've been gigging a bit with Neurosis lately. They're amazing. And also my friend Nolan Cook was running a band called Dimesland. He's still running it. It's in a bit of a lineup shift, but they do amazing stuff. Black Spirituals. I'm going to stop there. It's too much for...
I would say our friend, Michael Coleman has a couple projects that are really great. Young Nudist, and one called, I think, or it's similar, Michael Rocket Ship, I think it's called. Original music of his, and then
Just sort of electronic pop songs. Yeah.
yeah, and then this band out of Baltimore, Maryland called Horse Lords. I really like them a lot. And they're happening right now.
I grew up, as I said, playing classical piano and self-taught guitarist, and studied music in college and creative writing. And listened to, I was in bands in high school as well, and I was listening to a lot of prog rock when I was in high school, and folk, a lot of folk. Emily grew up playing classical violin and piano as well, and also was listening to a lot of folk. Played in orchestras, string quartets. Some studied Celtic music a bit, and Arabic music. She's played Arabic music. I'm speaking for the people that didn't speak. Kate grew up in a similar area to Emily as a classical musician, bassoonist, and later on became trained as a conductor. So she's actually a conductor as well, and also has listened to a fair amount of folk music. Yeah, music was always a priority in my life. I used to listen to it when I was a really little kid. It was a big deal, and I became a ritual every night as I was growing up. As soon as I had a portable way of, Walkman, I would listen for an hour or two before going to sleep every night. And I played music growing up, piano and guitar, and it's always been central. I have other interests, but music has always been, the main, if not the main focus in my life.
My mom is a singer-songwriter, and my dad always listened to music, and so it was always around. So I think I always went to it. I have memories before I started playing, being a kid and listening on headphones to all the time. So I think listening I always made time for listening to something. It was a way that I spent time alone.
No, it was not always a priority. TV was a priority. Drawing. Not freaking out at everything was a priority. Survival, that kind of stuff. Getting through middle school, those kinds of things.
Started playing guitar in high school and teaching myself metal songs. I was into like thrash metal from the Bay Area, a lot of death metal coming out of Florida in the 90s, and just miscellaneous classical stuff that I was discovering at the time. And so I started playing guitar and teaching myself, and then I went to college and just went on from there and started branching out. But I think I've always just been interested in ambitious music, for lack of a better word.
My background is in primarily jazz and classical music is what I started out doing, and went to school for that kind of stuff, and then got burnt out, started playing in rock bands, punk bands, that kind of stuff, and then moved to the Bay Area where I started doing more just improvised music and new music, and that's where I'm at currently. So stuff that kind of then brings all those interests together.
Hundreds of swears and one chimney stack, single file they emerge, single file they go back.
I write most of the music, particularly earlier on in the band. I wrote almost all the music, and initially it's a mixed bag as far as how we go about getting to the final product. Some of the pieces are fully composed, notated. That's not the rule, though, and then others are more approached as a singer-songwriter would approach a song, where there's it's guitar-based or even dulcimer-based, and I have the outlines of a song, and then I'll bring it to the group, and Jason will come up with bass lines. Most of the time, and so forth. Most of the time, it's somewhere in between, where I have some ideas for specific parts and some fully composed sections, and other open sections, and other sections that we improvise a little bit. We used to do a little more of that than we have in recent years. But also in recent years, we've moved towards more collaborative composition, where I'll have part of a song. I had basically a big back catalog when we started the band, and in more recent years, I exhausted that, and we started to. I'd come with an incomplete idea, and then I'd get, Jason would have an idea, and then he would it would kind of like, somebody would write this much, and then I would kind of take it home and write, a little extension to it and a counterpoint, and then we'd come back and over the course of time rehearsing and checking to see how things sound, and then going back to the drawing board and come up with more collaborative pieces that way. So it's really every method. And then, of course, the recordings are also totally different, too, because there's some recordings, particularly on our second-to-last album, Night Loops, has a lot of sort of in-studio productions where things were kind of built up. Some of the pieces were just built up as recordings and not as live pieces first. So that's a different process altogether, too, where it's partially notated, partially just experimented with in overdubs. So I think every process that can pertain to the writing process, collaborative and individual, has taken place within this group. It's totally a mixed bag. The lyrics are very important to the writing process, and I write all the lyrics, and they are oftentimes they're sketched out in my journals ahead of time. Some of them come from dream fragments or little ideas come to me in the middle of the night sometimes. And they really take life when they attach themselves to a melody. So usually I have a musical idea, and then there's a melody, and that's when the lyrics fit themselves into a meter. So they might have been a piece of prose ahead of time, or just a idea, something that had a scintillated in a certain way, and then they become really sort of codified when the music comes along. And then oftentimes they influence the music too, because there's a certain amount of narrative that I need to get in there, and that's how we came about having some of the longer pieces that we've been doing, particularly recently. The lyrics just demanded that this idea get finished, this narrative get finished. And they also dictate the structure of the music. Sometimes it goes the other way, but less frequently. I have had music where, the piece needs to end. I need to cut out some verses. An older piece called First of the Year is an example. There's like 3 or 4 verses that it's probably just as well that I didn't end up using. So lyrics are really important. For me, it's fully half the project. It's for my contribution to it anyway. It's a really significant aspect of what this project is to me.
Saddle up, take the bit, the cab is stalled, the meter lit. Grab a dollar, take a hit. Who's ever known the perfect fit? Sold and bought, I never got a feel for it.
Yeah, I'd say all of those sonorities have gotten in there on some level. We all of us, or many of us, listened to gamelan, and there was a gamelan ensemble at Mills, and we would play the instruments. I wasn't part of the ensemble, but Nikki Rees-Noir was, and I listened to a lot of it and learned a little bit about it from her. So that was kind of in the in our ears in the early days of the band. And I've also listened to a lot of Japanese Gigaku music, like Jason. It's really spellbinding, I think, that music.
All my friends are dead.
We have not been to Europe as a band, and it would be nice, but there's it's an expensive trip, and we don't really have the resources. It'd have to be something that could pay for itself. So that has yet to happen. It would be nice to do it at some point, though.